Hello, and a sincere welcome to you, my ambitious friend. Take a moment to clear your mind and focus on this. You are dedicating precious time to learning, and that is a truly courageous act. Today, we're not just having a lesson, we are giving you a master key, a key that can unlock any language 5 times faster. We are talking about the powerful, game-changing 80/20 rule, also known as the Pareto principle applied to language learning. This rule is the secret weapon of efficient learners who transform years of study into mere months. I promise you, this concept will completely revolutionize the way you study, making your effort finally match your results. As you listen to the story, pay close attention to the new vocabulary surrounding efficiency, focus, and breakthrough. Notice how our protagonist shifts her attention and unlocks rapid progress. Remember this truth: the true measure of intelligence is not how hard you work, but how smartly you focus. Tell me, what country are you listening from right now? And what time is it where you are? Share your location and time in the comments below. Transition: in the next few minutes, you will gain more than listening practice. You will naturally absorb new vocabulary related to productivity and effective learning. You will sharpen your listening comprehension, and most importantly, you will receive a powerful life lesson about the critical importance of prioritizing your efforts. Storytelling begins. Our story takes us to the ancient, sprawling city of Rome, Italy. The air is warm, filled with the aroma of strong coffee and old stone. Our protagonist is a historian named Amelia. Amelia was preparing for the biggest professional challenge of her life, presenting her PhD thesis on Roman history at a major international conference, entirely in Italian. She had 6 months to achieve conversational fluency, a deadline that seemed almost insurmountable, meaning impossible to overcome. Amelia was a perfectionist. She attacked the Italian language with incredible diligence, meaning careful and persistent work. She spent hours memorizing obscure verb conjugations, complex literary terms, and vocabulary related to ancient pottery, words she would never use in a real conversation. Her study room was filled with grammar charts and lists of rare words. 3 months into her study, halfway to the conference, Amelia was utterly exhausted. She knew thousands of words, yet she still struggled to order a simple coffee or hold a basic conversation with her neighbor. Her Italian was perfect on paper, but paralyzed in reality. She was spending 80% of her time learning things that only gave her 20% of her real-world communication ability. She was stuck in the labyrinth of effort, a maze where maximum effort yielded minimal results. She could perfectly conjugate the subjunctive tense of a rare verb, but she couldn't smoothly ask, "Excuse me, where is the nearest library?" She felt a deep sense of despair, that her dream was slipping away, not from lack of trying, but from misdirected effort. The turning point came during a tearful phone call with her mentor, Professor Diaz. Amelia cried, "I'm working 10 hours a day. I know the difference between passato remoto and trapassato prossimo, but I can't even tell the taxi driver where to go. My effort is not commensurate with my progress." Commensurate means corresponding in size or degree, proportional. Professor Diaz listened patiently and said, "Amelia, you are trying to study the entire ocean when all you need is a cup of water. You are using the wrong principle." He introduced her to the 80/20 rule. 80% of your results will come from only 20% of your efforts. He explained that in language, this means 20% of the vocabulary and grammar are responsible for 80% of all conversation. She was wasting time on the rare 80% she didn't need yet. He gave her a new mission: identify the high-leverage elements of Italian and focus only on those. Amelia hung up the phone, her mind buzzing with a new sense of clarity. She realized she had been climbing the wrong mountain. Amelia immediately overhauled her entire study plan. The 80/20 rule became her new compass. She stopped focusing on the obscure literary vocabulary and started analyzing the language of everyday life and academic presentation, the two areas that actually mattered. She identified the high-leverage 20% one, the 200 most common words. She realized that in Italian, as in English, a small core vocabulary makes up the vast majority of spoken communication. She threw away her list of ancient pottery terms and focused only on the frequency list, the words used most often. She made them her priority. 2. Conversational connectors. She stopped worrying about perfect subjunctive tense and focused on the simple transitional phrases needed to keep a conversation flowing. Phrases like, in my opinion, however, on the other hand, and to summarize. These phrases are simple but give an immediate feeling of fluency and sophistication. 3. Presentation structure. Since her goal was the conference, she focused on the specific 20% of grammar structures required for academic speech: how to introduce a topic, how to cite a source, and how to conclude powerfully. She practiced full sentences like, I will now present my findings, which contradict previous research, and conclusion, the evidence compels us to rethink the chronology. The verb compel means to force or strongly urge. Her study routine became radically simpler. She spent 80% of her time using the high-leverage 20% she had identified. She spent time writing and speaking simple, clear sentences using only the most common words. She stopped seeking perfection and started seeking impact. To practice, she sought out conversations with people who were not her professors: shopkeepers, cafe owners, and street vendors. She used her basic high-frequency vocabulary to talk about simple things: the weather, the food, the beauty of Rome. Her conversations were not perfect, but they were functional and genuine. The crippling anxiety that had previously paralyzed her began to fade. She realized the grammar she needed was the grammar of connection, not the grammar of academia. For example, she stopped worrying about the perfect use of the past tense and focused on the pragmatic, meaning practical use of the present and simple future. She was learning to think like a speaker, not a scholar. Her progress accelerated exponentially, meaning increasing rapidly. She was finally using her effort smartly. She felt a powerful sense of empowerment. The conference was approaching, and she was no longer dreading it. She was ready for her moment. 6 months had passed. Amelia stood before hundreds of global historians at the conference. The room was immense, and the pressure was palpable, meaning easily noticeable. She began her presentation, not with complicated academic jargon, but with simple, clear, and perfectly accented Italian. She used the high-leverage vocabulary she had painstakingly identified. Her presentation was structured around strong, clear transitional phrases that guided the audience through her complex historical arguments with ease. She didn't use many rare words, but the words she did use were the ones that counted, the 20% that carried the 80% of the meaning. When an expert challenged one of her findings during the Q&A, Amelia confidently responded, using her practiced conversational connectors. That is a fascinating perspective. However, my research indicates that the primary source materials contradict that conclusion. Her Italian was clear, concise, and incredibly authoritative. She used her vocabulary as a shield and a tool, not as a source of stress. Amelia's presentation was hailed as a triumph, not only for its historical merit, but for its clarity and accessibility. She realized that the 80-20th rule didn't just save her time, it saved her confidence. She learned that fluency is not about knowing everything, it's about knowing the right things that allow you to express the majority of your thoughts effectively. The motivational takeaway is this: stop trying to learn everything and start prioritizing the high-impact few. Identify the 20% of words and grammar, the most common words, the essential connectors, the phrases tied to your goals that will give you 80% of your real-world communication ability. Do not let perfectionism drag you into the labyrinth of effort. Focus on simplicity, focus on frequency, and focus on function. When you learn smartly, you learn faster. This principle doesn't just apply to language, it applies to life. Thank you for joining me on this powerful journey of efficiency. If Amelia's story has inspired you to apply the 80-20th rule to your own learning, and you are ready to start making faster progress, please subscribe to the channel right now. Don't miss the next lesson on focused high-leverage learning. Keep learning, keep focusing, and start seeing 5 times the results.